Between Julie and I, we've been doing muscle activation techniques for over 25 years. And during that time, we've learned some surprising truths about MAT. Today, we want to share 3 of them with you. We're going to cue our introduction and we're going to dive right into this conversation. Hey, welcome back, exercisers, to the Exercise is Health podcast, brought to you by Exercise for Life Studios, where we believe that your health is your most valuable asset. And the single best thing that you can do to both boost and protect this asset is exercise. Specifically, exercise is geared towards building the health and function of your muscles. We are your hosts, Charlie
and Julie.
And today we are diving into muscle activation techniques. Okay, this is a specialty that combined Julie and I have been practicing for over 25 years. And during that time, I know, it's kind of crazy to say that, right? I know.
I'm like, wow.
Well, I've been practicing for over 13, you've been practicing for over 12. So addition says over 25 when we combine our two, right?
That's
okay,
right.
But it just sounds funny. That being said, there are some surprising truths that we have learned along the way about MAT that we've seen time and time again hold true with our clients. And we want to share 3 of them with you today.
You're right, Charlie. We have been doing this for I feel like forever. And honestly, MAT, when I learned MAT, it went about addressing things in the body like almost backwards. And what I've learned that's really cool about that is that most of the time when there's something going on in your body, you're doing some stuff. You're like doing stuff, right? At your house, from YouTube, things you learned at the physical therapist 10 years ago. Like you're already doing things. And so if you're not being successful with that thing, you can either do more of the stuff that is not bringing about success, or you can do something that is completely different. And that's what we see a lot on the MAT table. Like people that have tried a lot of things, and they're like, well, none of it's worked. And we're like, good news. This is not more of the same thing. Mm-hmm. But anyways, we've learned a lot along the way and proven a lot of our own personal values wrong in terms of where we came from in the fitness industry, because I think that we came kind of like how everyone else came. Like just, we really liked moving. We really liked exercising. We really liked being athletic and exercise. I already said exercising, but doing sports and just doing all the things. And then we had to kind of sift through things. And from our experiences with MAT, many of which we're going to share today, I think we've become very biased in how we view exercise, because we just see it work over and over and over and over and over again. And we see the other stuff not work. And so we're going to jump into some of the things that we have learned to be true for us and true for what we see practicing MAT every day in terms of how it applies to your body and what we almost call them like body beliefs, like what we believe and see happen in the body each and every day.
Absolutely. So if you're listening to this right now, we need you to buckle up, because the truth that seriously, they rocked my world once I finally saw, what they were. And so many of our clients, they rocked their world as well, because especially when people are holding strongly onto their beliefs of what they believe to be true, and then we share these truths with them, it can cause some friction, and there can be some resistance to really buying into these truths. But once people do, it changes everything for them. So like I said, buckle up, listen closely, because these 3 things that we're going to share can have a profound impact, not only in how you go about exercising, how you go about addressing things with your body, but how you view yourself and what you are capable of as well, okay?
I was going to say, so if you feel a little bit not okay listening to these, that's okay. Mm-hmm. We felt pretty not okay learning these things through experience also. So here we go.
All right, so the first truth that we've learned over the years is you do not need to stretch in order to feel looser. This was
everyone click this off now.
This was
Don't
a
keep
huge
going.
one. No, this was a huge one, because all growing up, I was so indoctrinated into the idea of you need to stretch in order to lengthen your muscles. You need to stretch if you're feeling tight. If something is feeling achy or stiff or like it's restricted in your body, you need to stretch in order for that to change. And for over 13 years now, I've seen that to be 100% not the case. You do not need to stretch to feel looser. I see it every single day with every single client that I work with, that we're not only objectively is their range of motion changing for the better, but subjectively, what they are sensing, what they are feeling, what they are experiencing in their body, both immediately after the session, well, immediately during the session, immediately after the session, and then for the days and weeks that follow. It's like, oh yeah, that stuff that did feel really tight, we didn't do any stretching, and it feels way looser.
That's right. It's almost like we've learned that A plus B equals C, meaning your body plus tightness equals you should stretch. That's like how indoctrinated it is into all of us. And Charlie and I included. I think like Charlie was the master of being the most inflexible stretch person and foam roller person ever, like relaxation techniques. And I was pretty flexible, but it was something that had to be done all the time. And so what's so interesting is that when we learned MAT and we started using MAT, I remember literally not knowing what to do. Like learning this and then being like, so I just do nothing? Like,
what do I do with all that stretching stuff that I was doing?
I know. Like I had like 30 minutes of stretching that I'm not doing anymore. But when we started learning MAT, doing it on ourselves, now it is like the furthest thing that I think of when I have tight muscles. Like people are always like, well, Julie, what do you do when you get tight muscles? I'm like, well, I either get MAT or if it's really bad, I might take like a anti-inflammatory or something. Like, and before I used to say, oh, the side effects of the anti-inflammatory are really bad. We should just stretch. And now I'm like, the side effects of stretching are really bad. I'll just take the anti-inflammatory because I have seen over and over again that when you're stretching and pulling on the body, it's actually a stressor to the body. Just like anything else you do to the body, stretching is a stressor. It's just that we always use stretching as I should do more. And if there's tightness, that's always an indicator for stretching. And what it does is it oftentimes leaves your body more vulnerable to injury. The results, the changes you feel are very short-lived, maybe a couple minutes to an hour to maybe through your first sleep. But your body's always going to reinstate that tightness because the tightness is there for a reason. I think the biggest like blow your mind moment was like when Charlie and I realized like, holy crap, our nervous system, our body, our brain, our spinal cord has placed tight muscles there for a reason. It's not a mistake. And if we try to remove them by pulling on them and stretching them and smushing into them and stabbing into them and doing all the things we want to do, they're always going to come back until you solve the reason that your nervous system put them there. And that's why we find muscle activation techniques to change tightness in such a huge way with never stretching. Because you remove the reason the nervous system put the tight muscle there, and the tight muscle there just goes away by itself. And you don't really have to directly address it, but you're actually more directly addressing the problem, which is the muscle inhibition, which is what MAT solves. So what's really cool is that we find people are looser, they're feeling more free. The faster that we get our clients to stop stretching and just trust the process of MAT, the faster their regular muscle tightness goes away.
Absolutely. That is something that I can say definitively that I tell my clients up front when they're asking me about stretching is, well, the clients that stop stretching the soonest progress the fastest. And some people are like, great, I didn't like the stretching stuff anyways. Some people are like, well, can I still do this, that, or the other? And so it's an ongoing conversation, and that's okay. Everybody's coming in at a different place. Remember, these are truths that we have learned, but like we said, when we first got exposed to them, it blew our minds. And so we fully expect that there's some like, really, is that really the case when we present it to people as well? But like I said, we've seen it time and time again. Myself for over 13 years, Julie for over 12 years of doing muscle activation techniques. The fact is, you do not need to stretch to feel looser. That is truth number one. Dude, you want to share truth number two with them? Because I feel like this is one that you expose your clients to so often.
That's right. So the second one is that strengthening your muscles can and will reduce your joint pain. Now, this one's a crazy one because most people think the opposite. That when I get stronger, when I'm working on my strength, when I'm working on my muscle, tone and using my muscles more and more, I will have more joint discomfort and joint pain. But we actually see the opposite, right? That when you have stronger muscles, your joint pain will decrease. Reason being is that your joints are strictly actively controlled by muscle tissue. So that means that muscles are the one thing in your body that that contract, they release, they stabilize, they mobilize, they do all this stuff. Everything else is a passive tissue in your joint. So whether you have like a structural issue in your joint, like something that's diagnosed, an itis, inflammation, something that's torn, adding in muscular strength will always decrease your joint pain because the joint is getting now more support and it's kind of setting up a more healing environment, we like to think.
Absolutely. And I think a kind of offshoot truth to this, or what goes right in line with this, is joint issues are actually muscle issues. Muscle issues.
100%.
Yeah. So anyways, so often people say, okay, well, it's my knee that's bugging me. So it's a knee, like joint structure of the knee issue. And what we have seen to be true time and time again is that when your muscles work better, your joints feel better. Even if there is a known structural issue going on with the joints. Just like you were saying, Julie, the muscles are the thing that support the joints. The muscles are the thing that control the joints, okay? If the joint is not being supported, and if the joint is not being controlled properly, the joint has to take on more stress. More stress on the joint often leads to more symptoms with the joint. By managing the stress on the joint, by managing the things that are supposed to support the joint, by managing the things that are supposed to control the joint, i.e. your muscles, you can reduce the stress that is on the joint and oftentimes change the symptoms that are going on with the joint. So strengthening your muscles, improving the function of your muscles through the MAT process, we have seen have a profound impact over joint-related symptoms. And as a kind of offshoot to that, or like the next step or the thing that is implied with that truth is when there is a joint issue, there is always an associated muscle issue. In fact, I don't know that I have ever seen a case where somebody comes in and they're having a structural or it's just simply symptomatic joint issue going on and there hasn't been an associated muscle issue. The muscles are so powerful at influencing the joints, and we've seen that time and time again.
That's right. And when we use muscle activation techniques on people with joint issues or diagnosed or not diagnosed, and really honestly, any other passive tissue that's associated with a joint. So for example, like if you have like a spinal issue and you have a disc that is bulging, that would be an associated passive tissue. Or some joints are known to getting like tendinitis. Those are also passive tissues, or fasciitis. Those are passive tissues associated with a joint. Those all take on lots of stress when the muscle system is failing or not doing its job. And so when we use muscle activation techniques, we're looking neurologically what muscles are not able to participate when you're doing your exercises and your strengthening and your corrective exercises and when you are being active and your walks that's supposed to be making you strong but makes you feel worse. Those types of things, we're looking, hey, what muscles are failing? What muscles are not working efficiently? And when we restore their ability to contract, then the joint always feels better because it's supporting that joint. It's making that joint less stressful. And the only way things can heal is if we take stress off of them, if we create a healing environment. So definitely a big truth that we see all the time is that when you have a joint issue, you definitely 100% have a muscular strength issue. And we always do see it going back to neurological function, because you can go to the gym and you can be like, hey, well, I strength train all the time and I still have some joint pain. Well, you probably have some inefficiencies with the neurological function of the muscles that is keeping those muscles from being as efficient as they could be. And that's what we see really driving a lot of issues in joints. So stronger muscles will always mean better feeling and functioning joints.
Definitely. Okay. So we've talked about a habit that a lot of people have, which is stretching, and that you don't actually need to stretch in order to feel looser. Okay. We talk about a lot of the symptoms that people have with joint pain, and that how when there is a joint symptom, there is always an associated muscle issue. This third one is directly about the beliefs that so many people have about themselves overall. Not just like specific areas of the body, but their body overall. Okay. And the truth that we have seen time and time again is you're not feeling old, you're feeling weak. Mm-hmm. And that's a profound shift that needs to take place in people's minds. Is when you wake up and you're like, I'm stiff, I'm achy, I'm sore, I got this, that, or the other going on. And the story that we tell ourselves is, this is what it feels like when I'm feeling old. We need to shift the language away from old and, this is what it feels like when I'm feeling weak, when my muscles are weak. Okay, now, why this is so important? One of the big reasons why this is so important, because there's nothing you can do about getting old. And so if you just want to completely abdicate responsibility and say, you know what, I'm just getting old, there's nothing I can do about it, this is just how it's going to be for the rest of forever, and you want to live in that story where you no longer have to take responsibility for how your body feels or how your body functions, great. Then stick with the story that you're getting old. But if you actually want your body to start feeling better, functioning better, then you have to say, okay, there's something that I need to be able to do about this. Now, it puts the ball back in your court. It makes you take responsibility for something that you can do, and shifting the language away from just feeling, I'm feeling old, to I'm feeling weak. Weak is something that you can do about. There's something that you can do about, my muscles aren't strong enough. There's something you can do about how my body is not in the condition that it needs to be. There's stuff that you can do about that. You can do nothing about old. There's so much that you can do about weak. And so if you are truly actually wanting to change how your body's feeling, how your body's functioning, then changing your language around this is a really big thing. But it's not just a language thing, because this is something that we've seen to be a truth time and time again, where clients who come in and their body feels a certain way, and over the course of an MAT session or the course of a series of sessions or working with us for months, we've had clients that have been working with us for over a decade now, okay? And the things that they say about their body and how they experience living in their body, they don't feel those feelings of being old, okay? They feel the feelings that they once felt in their 20s, in their 30s, okay? In their 40s, all right? The things where they're like, oh yeah, I do feel strong, I do feel capable, I do feel mobile, I do feel energized, all right? And so in their mind, they have no longer just left the responsibility of somebody else of like, I'm just getting old. They've taken responsibility for it and say like, no, when my body doesn't feel the way I want, that's an indication that I'm actually weak. That's what I'm feeling. I'm feeling weak. I'm not feeling old. You can do something about weak.
That's right. So it's really how you're viewing this thing. So one thing is that, like, depending on who you are, if we say, you're weak, some people might be like, you're right, I never exercise, like, I just move around throughout my day. You're right, I am weak. And some people, we would say, you're weak, or you have weakness in your body. Would take high offense to that. Because like, what? I work on my fitness all the time. How could I possibly be weak? How are you telling this to me? So when you were explaining this, Charlie, so side note, we have a 5-year-old daughter starting kindergarten. She's going to do this Spanish program. So I studied Spanish for a lot of years, and I've been just like rekindling all this Spanish stuff in my brain and rehearsing it, thinking about how I'm going to talk to her. So something that's in the Spanish language is there's 2 ways to say I am. One is like an identity, like I am or you are, and it's like an always thing, like you are an amazing person, you have a beautiful soul, you are so intelligent, right? Those are things that never change about you. But then you can say like I am or you are, and you can say something that's like a today thing, like you look really nice, like
more transit.
Yeah, exactly, right? Like tomorrow you might not look so nice, but today you look really nice, So you know what I'm saying? So one is how you always are. The other is like a temporary condition, and both are appropriate. This weakness that we're talking about, because it's so changeable, it's conditional. Like if you had a cold, you know that like in 3 days you'll be over the cold. So you wouldn't say like, I permanently have a cold and have that like as a self-label. You're like, well, I just gotta rest, I gotta work on this cold thing, whatever, and do your thing. This weakness, especially when we're thinking about how we view the body with MAT, it's not like to be not weak, now you have to start exercising, 3 hours a day and become a marathon runner and go to the gym and lift really, really heavy weights. But to be not weak, we're talking more about we need to change your neurological function. We need to change how your body's functioning so that you don't wake up and have those things that are so normal for most people that you call old, but it's actually weakness. And we want you to know that weakness is, like you said, Charlie, like a transient thing. It's something you can change. It's not a permanent diagnosis. It's not a forever thing. It's something you can change. And this is actually a really good thing. So we like to say, you're weak, because that's how we view it, and we don't really view it emotionally. But you also can think of it as like, I have some weaknesses. Just like you might wake up and be like, oh, I have a tight muscle, and a lot of people don't think too much about that. If you have a tight muscle, that means you got a weak one. So there's a weakness there. So you can also think about this, I have this weakness, it's changeable, but then you have to do the appropriate actions to change it. And what we see time and time again are that people that regularly get muscle activation techniques aren't having these normal symptoms that we call getting old. Or, oh, just wait till you get to 40. Oh, just once you pass 50, then you just, everything's gonna go downhill. Well, that's the point where you'll probably just have to start doing more maintenancing so that you're not getting those old feelings that are actually just weaknesses in your body, and now they're starting to come out.
Absolutely. So again, we have seen so many truths about MAT over, practicing for well over a decade for each of us, combined over 25 years of experience between the two of us. But these are three that really stand out in our minds that surprise most people when they experience them for the first time as well, that they don't need to stretch in order to feel looser. That if they're having a joint symptom, that's almost a guarantee that there is a muscle issue going on. And those feelings that they have of getting old, that's really just feelings of their body getting weaker. And they can do something about weaker. We can all do something about getting weaker in order to get stronger. Getting old is kind of out of the question, or out of the realm of something that we are able to control. So control what you can. You can do things to get your body stronger. MAT is one of them, and we have seen that time and time again to have a profound impact on how people feel and how people function. So if you're in the Chicagoland area and you would like to get on our tables for muscle activation techniques, get your body assessed, figure out where you have some dysfunction from a neuromuscular perspective happening, all you have to do to see our schedule and get in our schedule is go to www.matschaumburg.com. There's a big green button that says Get Started Now or Get Started. You click that and you'll see our availability. You can just schedule yourself right for your consultation and assessment for MAT. So who do you know that needs to hear this episode? Who do you know that is very married to the, very married.
We're keeping that. I'm not editing that out. I like it.
A strong belief system around their need to stretch in order to feel looser, or if their belief that if they are having a joint symptom, that means it is only a joint issue. There's nothing else going on, or they're of the belief that they are just getting old and there's nothing they can do about it. Share this episode with them so they can get exposed to some of the truths that we have been exposed to over the last, again, 25 years combined of doing muscle activation techniques. And while you're online, head on over to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to us and leave us a rating and review. It helps people find our podcast when they're looking for information on exercise and they're looking for information on health. So if you found value in this conversation today, let us know by leaving us a 5-star rating and review. Well, thanks so much for tuning in. We always appreciate it. Have a fantastic week, and we'll talk with you all next week.
This podcast is for information purposes only. The statements and views on this podcast are not medical advice. This podcast, including Julie and Charlie Gates, disclaim responsibility for any possible adverse effects from the use of information contained herein. Opinions of guests are their own, and this podcast does not endorse or accept responsibility for statements made by guests. This podcast does not make any representations or warranties about guest qualifications or credibility. This podcast may contain paid endorsements or advertisements for products or services. Individuals on this podcast may have a direct or indirect financial interest in products or services referred to herein. If you think you have a medical issue, consult a licensed physician.